Welcome to the Unfuck Your Fitness podcast. I am your host, Christy Castillo, and I'm here to give you real talk and cut the BS so you can actually enjoy building a body you love. I'm a personal trainer obsessed with giving you simple action steps to take you from feeling stuck to feeling sexy. Let's go. Hey guys, what's up? I am super excited about today's episode. I am chatting today with Rachelle Robinett, who is a beautiful and so talented and so down to earth. I've been stalking your Instagram page, who is a writer, an herbalist, educator, and a lifelong naturalist. And she offers beginner-friendly advice, guide, and in my opinion, a very, very fresh perspective to herbalism, which is exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast. Herbalism, for just to kind of break it down, is the science and art of plants as medicine. And you also do a very good job of sharing everyday remedies, rituals, breaking it down so nicely. So welcome to the podcast, Rachelle. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm excited. Tell me a little bit about yourself, just kind of like what you're up to these days, and then we'll dive into all the details.
Oh, yeah. Well, these days I am very much in the world of kind of promoting this book. It's been a labor of love. I mean, it's the culmination of over 10 years working in herbalism, but really a lifetime of, working and studying and practicing and exploring herbalism, the natural world, plants as medicine. I live in Brooklyn and Costa Rica, and I'm just a forever student of life, of the body, of nature, of the mind, and can't wait to continue to explore and write more about it as I do so.
Yeah. How long have you been into? Has it kind of always been something that you've been attracted to and wanted to learn about?
Yeah, in many ways it was. I grew up on a farm in the Pacific Northwest, and my parents worked in Western medicine and sort of holistic functional medicine, respectively, dad and mom. And, I was never intent on making sort of healthcare my career, but I was fascinated from the time, as long as I can remember, I was fascinated by the body's relationship with nature and how when we engage with these different aspects of our environment, they change our states, so really kind of philosophically or really deep in at the root cause, kind of nonverbal, like what is light doing to our body? What is sound and temperature and, even what are thoughts doing to our body and why do they make us feel the way that we feel? So I was studying that or trying to study that from the time I was very young, which led me into, exploring the world's healing traditions, the world's mysticism, the world's spirituality, and all of that ultimately, some decades later led me into herbalism. And I realized that herbalism is that holistic practice. It's that lifestyle that really looks at the entirety of the human body and the environment that we exist in and how those two things coexist.
Awesome. I love that. I love the way that you explain things. It just makes so much sense to me. There's a lot in my world of health and fitness. There's, that there's so much out there, and a lot of it is just said in a way that you don't understand. And I think this topic, this space is maybe, I don't even know if overlooked is the right way, but everything in health and fitness on my end, you learn it a certain way and you learn how to move and how to work out and how to eat. And it really takes away from listening to your body. It takes away from, a lot of it takes away from, anyway, speaking in general terms, that part of it, the nature, the sound, all of that. It becomes very much of having a plan. And a lot of that is what I talk about. So I'm really excited to dive into this because it is, you have your macros and you have just all the things in my fitness space. And then there's this tie into this space, which I love both. And so I just think it's something that I love the way that you speak about it, is what I'm trying to say, that it's so it's just so normal, because that's why I created this whole podcast, is to unfuck your fitness. I want you to say it in a way that just makes sense to everybody instead of making it seem like such a foreign topic, which
Yeah.
I think herbalism seems like a foreign topic unless you dive into it, the way, does that, you're nodding your head like, yes, but I'm
Yes,
glad you agree.
I do. I do agree. I totally agree that it is overlooked.
hmm
And the ironic thing is that it is all around us. Like it's
Yeah.
in our kitchen already. It's in our spice cabinet. It's at the coffee shop. It's in the sidewalks. It's like growing through the concrete. It's in our
Yeah.
backyards. It is all around us all the time. And it precedes all of it precedes modern medicine. It precedes the wellness industry. And the other thing that I love about it is that it includes all of that, right?
hmm
I love, like, let's talk about macros. You can talk about macros and herbalism. You
Yes.
can talk about habit stacking and herbalism. I use all of those things together. And herbalism is, to me, it's just this, like, it's like, pulling back the curtain, or like unveiling that we're actually surrounded by it. And it's the context and the container where all of these tactics and hacks and, these sort of acute resolutions, if you will, ladder up into this broader framework that can just kind of be this container to make it all make sense, to connect it all, and to connect it all back to the natural world, which ultimately, we are nature. So we need to not forget that.
Yeah, ignore that part. Agreed. I like that you just said that. You can have both. And I think when I was first coming into, I probably was more interested. I don't remember if I got into health and fitness, well, fitness, I should say, and then was interested into like more of the holistic eating and the herbs and all that kind of stuff. And then kind of went back to fitness because in my head, they were so separate. In my head, it was like, you're either eating clean or you're tracking your macros, or, you're into herbalism and you're doing, or you're not. It was kind of like, you can't half-ass it. That's just kind of how I looked at it. As I'm going through my own journey or just living life, I'm realizing more and more the importance of the things that you talk about, and that they can go together. And not only can they should. They should go
Yeah.
together. Like you said, this does precede all of that. So I really like, you have to talk about the book for a moment. It's beautiful. You have it behind you, and you had sent me the transcript. So a beautiful setup back there. It's seriously beautiful, and it's so easy to digest and understand. I have not read the entire thing because I didn't have time to do that before our meeting here, but I really do like, it's called Naturally, The Herbalist's Guide to Health and Transformation. It truly is the ultimate beginner-friendly guide to herbalism. If I can digest it, that is a real beginner's guide. And I really like how it talks about the nine primary types of herbs, their benefits, how to incorporate them. It does that in a way that's so simple. And just like a lot of what I was saying, unfucking your fitness on this podcast, it breaks it down into how to actually do it, because it becomes this, for me, I hear herbalism, no clue where to start. I know what it means, but I don't know where to start. And you talk about choosing one thing. What's one thing that you want to start with? You talk about, you don't need all the things in your wellness routine. You really just break it down so simple. So let's dive into that quickly and kind of talk about that, because again, like health and fitness, when I say, you need a plan, you need to track your macros, there's all these things that you have to do, not have to, but should, kind of do to get the body you want, whatever we're talking about in that space. If we're bringing that into, herbalism terms, it does become overwhelming. So you do say to start with one. Can you talk about that for a little bit as someone who's brand new, and just kind of teach us how to break that down?
Absolutely. Yeah, what I would say is, or what I do say is, in terms of, where to start, and obviously that's why I wrote this book, because that's one of the most common questions, that I get, of course. What is herbalism? Where
Yeah.
do I start? Like, I don't even know if I like it. I don't know if I trust it, but tell me a little bit about it. And without fail, anytime that somebody learns, what herbalism actually is and what it can do for our lives, like, we all want this. We all
hmm
need this. We're all looking for it, even if we don't realize we're looking for it. So just kind of, just revealing a little bit of what it is always leads to more interest and some kind of adoption. But in terms of, where to start, and that one step to take. I like to look at somebody's routine and say, what are you already working on right now? Or what are you seeking an answer for? Or what is something that, is plaguing you? What's some imbalance in your body? Like always start with you. And that's advice I give broadly in terms of, what supplements do we need to be taking? What trendy, health, whatever do we need to be doing? It's not about whatever is popular in the industry right now. It's about your body and your life and your needs. So let's say I have migraines, and um, I want to resolve them naturally, so that would be a place to start and say, okay, what kind of herbs might be able to help me there? Or I am trying to improve my fitness performance. There are absolutely herbs that are going to improve fitness performance or fitness recovery, right?
Mhm.
So we start with what we need, and then we can go to, obviously my book will, give you plenty of sort of first steps to take. There are also resources like, health food stores, farmers markets, herb shops. There are herbalists in every town. So if somebody really likes to learn from another, human directly, we can connect with them. A lot of holistic healthcare practitioners also understand herbalism. They need to be sort of in the functional health space. But really, that's why I wrote naturally, So you go to the chapter on energy and motivation and find, the herb or the herbal protocol to start. And then that might look like, to be really specific, that might look like drinking a specific cup of tea at once a day to begin, or even easier, an herbal blend in capsule format that you take along with any other supplement you're already taking. Just put it in the cabinet right by the others and add it to your stack. And that is one step, to include a little bit more herbalism in your life. Carry a tincture around and, spike your water periodically. It's just one step like that leads to the next, to the next, to the next. But like with anything, I don't recommend taking more than one step at a time. We need to make it habit. We need to know how it feels in our body and our lives before we add on another.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said it just like you said it. Like, I think that's part of it too. When you're looking at someone else, it's like that in, all of social media or whatever, kind of talking about, yeah, how you said, not looking at something that someone else is doing or what's popular in the space. It's what is something that you would like help with, something that you're trying to improve on, and go that way. I think that alone makes it so much easier to dive in rather than what is someone else doing or, what is this herb and what can it help me with? It's going to
Yeah.
make more sense and affect you more so if you have something you're looking for and then going out. For me too, that's research. Whereas I think that's with anything in kind of this space is if it's not your goal to begin with, or you're not struggling with migraines, why would you take something
Exactly.
for migraines? Or instead of looking at it as all or nothing, think of something that you are struggling with and move into that. I think that's a really smart way and simple way of not making it overcomplicated. So that
Yeah, not
really
being
makes sense.
overwhelmed by this space. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much coming at us now. So many new products, so many trends, so many headlines, and it's fine to consume them and we can be educated about what's, popular and see if maybe it is something we need. For example, creatine's return. But ultimately, we need to start with our own health. And I
Yeah.
definitely talk about that in the book because because otherwise, it can be it can feel a bit like flailing, try a
Mhm.
trend and try a trend and try a trend. And,
Yeah,
that doesn't lead to long-term sustainable, vitality or transformation if that's what we're looking for.
sure. Then you feel like you're still kind of
Yeah.
chasing the next thing or kind of still out there looking. Do you recommend, and this is totally just a, a random question, but for me, if I'm looking at, let's say I am on creatine,
Hmm.
would there like creatine, there's a couple of different things that I take, not a lot because I very much only take things that I need for my own body. I don't really stray at all into other supplements and good for you. If that's something that I'm struggling with, it doesn't even catch my eye.
Yeah.
Would you recommend a kind of like, if I'm like, okay, I kind of want something that's a little more natural to, replace my creatine? Or do you recommend taking both? Or, how are you kind of in like the replacement factor of, or does it depend on the supplement, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. And all random questions are totally welcome. I love it.
I'm like, now we're thinking about me. Let me ask a specific question.
That's great. That's what we're supposed to
Yeah.
say, right? I mean, I take creatine too. And I think that it definitely depends on the supplement if you want to replace the supplement or supplement the supplement with herbs. So creatine is very, specific and kind of special in its makeup and how it works in the body, what it does. So I wouldn't attempt to replace creatine with herbs. However, for example, along with my creatine, I take herbs that help enhance physical performance and recovery. I work out pretty intensely. I love it. I've always been like a fitness head, if you will, like a little gym rat, or, I surf and run and
Love
cycle and
that.
lift. And so we can supplements with herbs. Or, for example, if we're taking a vitamin C supplement, that's an opportunity to replace it with an herb or
Okay.
an herbal blend that's high in vitamin C. And the benefit of doing that is that herbs are full spectrum. They are concentrated extracts. I mean, herbs are herbs, but herbal supplements are, full spectrum. They're concentrated extracts of the entirety of the plant. So we get something called synergy, where, the plant or the supplement, it works better because it's still whole. It's not that we've isolated just the vitamin C out of that plant and concentrated it into a supplement. We're actually taking the whole, rose hip extract,
Yeah.
for example, or something like that. And that's the case with turmeric. That's the case with vitamin C. That's the case with a lot of different things. Last thing I would say there is that all herbs have so many more benefits than maybe just the one or two that we're seeking. So we get all of these sort of secondary and tertiary benefits when we're taking plant-based, supplements along with the vitamin C, if that's what we're after, for example.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I knew that was gonna be a question that I would get from someone listening, honestly. I know
Definitely.
my listeners pretty well. They're gonna know, like, should I stop this? Should I add this? So, because I think too, I get a lot of questions about supplements and, should I take this? How do I know if it's working? And I'm like, well, you should know if it's working. I mean, you should feel that it's working. So if you don't feel that it's working, I personally wouldn't take it. Or if you stop taking it and then you feel a difference and you think, okay, well, I just wasn't noticing because I felt so much better, if you kind of stop taking something. So that's something in terms that just of supplements that I would say. So it's good to know. And I'm sure that your book dives all the way into that as far as, what to take. And I love the entirety of that too. If you're not separating, just isolating the vitamin C or isolating one part. I mean, anything you can take in more whole natural form is better,
Hmm.
right? So that makes sense.
Yeah. And in terms of like whether or not supplements are working or whether or not herbs are working, we can treat herbs just like supplements in that sense. And you can definitely feel it out,
Mhm.
is my recovery improved? Are my, migraines, for that example, improved? Whatever it is. I'm also a very big fan of getting tested,
Mhm.
having labs, doing our blood work. And this is where you see sort of herbalism meeting modern science or modern healthcare in a really beautiful way. We can get tested, understand exactly what we need, look for the natural sources of support for those, levels, and then take those herbs for 6 months or a year, however long it is, get tested again and know exactly how well they worked, so we can
Yeah.
feel it out. But I really like to work with labs because I think then we're not guessing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great tip as well. We are big over here on creating routines and trying to fit these things in and making them habits. I know I don't want this to necessarily come across to my listeners. And I know my clients we're already trying to figure out how to fit everything in, right? And kind of learn all of this. And your book is so simple. And even your Instagram, I'll of course have everything tagged in the show notes. But when I go to your Instagram, it's just so refreshing. Even the quotes, everything is just like so nice. And it makes it feel like I can do this. There's nothing wrong. It's not like pressure as far as, like you just said, take all of these things, buy all of these and do all of this and, kick everything out. So As far as kind of incorporating this in, you talked about, of course, choosing something that you're struggling with or a goal that you have. What is your, I guess, advice, or how do you go about being more intentional, seeking things out that are for you and then creating a routine around it? Because I know for me, I have certain routines. So, I get up in the morning and I take my creatine and my drinks that's right next to me, like my probiotics and stuff. So I could add it into that. Or if there's certain things at bedtime that you would associate with this, do you kind of habit stacking, those kinds of things?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. So the first thing I would say is that, it may not sound like it at first, but, the way that I explain it in herbalism and hopefully the way I can explain it right now is working with herbalism is actually going to simplify our lives. It is not something that has to be another thing to do. I mean, I've worked with thousands of people, one on one, in their daily routines, understanding like it's not going to work if it's another thing that we have to do. So, again, yeah, to answer your question, how do we simply integrate this? I love to habit stack. So, anything you're already doing that can have either the herbal kind of addition to it or a replacement. So if
Okay.
there's something that we're taking or doing or using, that could be replaced with herbs, that's a perfect way to just, add this single step into your routine. So, I have my supplements that I take in the morning and that I have them kind of, well, morning, midday, and evening, and I have these
Okay.
rows in my cabinets where I know exactly, what time of day this sort of lineup goes for. And those are some supplements like probiotics, amino acids, and also herbs. And they're
Mhm.
all blended right there. I have, coffee in the morning, but it's half coffee, half herbal coffee.
Okay.
If I'm drinking water throughout the day, there are herbs in the water because it's a big batch of tea that I brewed at the beginning of the week or because I've dropped some tinctures into it. Now, my routine is a bit intense because I've been doing this forever.
Sure.
However, the easiest way to integrate it is, that single step habit stack or replacement and just stick with that step, like we said before, until it is second nature. And then we can add on one more. And I think something that people will love about Naturally is I have case studies in there from clients that I've worked with. And it is extremely detailed, in terms of describing exactly how we affected their routine. I
Mhm.
recommended this at this time in this way. This person did this. They had these results. And you can see how, diet, lifestyle, herbalism, all of it sort of works, gradually over time to change and become ultimately transformational. So there's
I
lots of
love
real
that.
life examples in the book of how this works. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's really, it just makes it more real, I guess. I feel like in
Totally.
some, it's not, I live in a really small town and it's not, herbalism isn't something that is talked about there at all. So,
Yeah.
I kind of always had to go outside of my space, outside of my town. And it's very, my mom actually, but she knows a lot about, I don't know if it's herbs specifically, but she's always dove into this sort of thing and always had this stuff around. So it was never been anything that I was a stranger to, but I didn't ever know who to go to, or I could go to the World Wide Web, I realize, but I like a person. So like, I want you to teach me. I'm very vocal that way. So yeah, I feel like for some people it just feels very untouchable. So I think your book in general, and then those case studies, seeing what's possible,
Yeah.
because I think too, is it, as far as unfucking your fitness and just the fitness space, generally I'm on here talking about muscle building and, these very
Yeah.
specific things. It seems separate, but it's not. And I love that you even said, I work out pretty intensely and I take creatine. I mean, we're going to love that because it seems like you see someone online that's an herbalist, you wouldn't think they take creatine. I mean, because they just seem so separate. So I just love that. Do you get asked that a lot? Like, is that a lot of what you talk about or not at all? Integrating the two.
It's a great point because, from the very beginning of my work in herbalism, I was determined to present it and to represent it in a way that it is not commonly presented or
Perfect.
represented.
Yeah.
It can be stylish. It can be cool. It is totally relevant for modern lives. It works with, high performance fitness or athleticism. It works with, I was working in fashion in New York City, and I was an herbalist. Like,
Love it.
these are
Yeah.
things people are like, you're wearing lipstick and you're an herbalist. You're wearing high heels and you're an
Yes.
herbalist. I
Why?
don't understand, but I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, so it was always part of my mission to just show that it does not have to be the brand that it has, acquired over the years. It can be crunchy and it can be, relegated to health food stores, but it can also be in the fashion industry in New York City or in the tiniest town that's never, that thinks they haven't heard of herbalism. But again, they're probably
It's
practicing
all
herbalism.
around us.
It can be
Yeah.
gym. Like it is. It's for everyone. It really, really is. And it used to be part of all of our lives. Historically, in all of our lineages, herbalism is there. It was the original medicine. Animals use herbalism. Like it's in our genes. It's in our
Yeah.
past. So
Yeah, I love that. Let's bring it back. Bring it back. I honestly, when I get emails all the time, to have people on the show, and I'm like, gosh, an herbalist. Like, I'm just like, okay, go to your page. You're like adorable and like so relatable, but I'm like, an herbalist on the Unfuck Your Fit. I'm just like, how do they, even in my brain, and there are just certain, things that we're just taught or just the way that we think. And I'm like, I don't know, but I really want to. And then as I'm diving in, I'm like, no, it's perfect, actually, the way that you go about it. But in my head, I'm thinking, is this going to be a crunchy person? Kind of saying like, you have to do this, this, and this. Where on last week's episode, I'm saying you don't have to do you know what I mean? It's just like,
totally.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, yes, this is going to be great, because merging the two worlds is honestly, well, that's why I created this podcast, not to create the merge of these two worlds, but just to, like, I think, kind of break down some barriers too, like unfucking your fitness for yourself. What does fitness look like literally for you? What do you want out of it? It doesn't matter what it looks like for anyone else, and it doesn't matter what anyone else is kind of taking, and what do you want for yourself? And I find a very gradual transition. So another sidebar, but kind of how I teach clients is we start obviously where they're at, and they come to me for fitness, and we learn macros and we learn the things, eating kind of whatever. And I don't really care about the perfection of it. As we go into it, they naturally want to know more about whole foods. They want to know, how can I not drink protein shakes 3 times a day? What's some more natural foods? And then it also is going to go right into this as far as what are more healthy ways I can supplement and all of this. So yeah, it's such a natural transition. And I think it's not talked about a lot, but I do talk about it behind the scenes a lot, but I'm not an expert. So I think it's just great. On that note, and you did touch on it a little bit as far as our modern lives, what if there's something that maybe bothers you, or if there's something you could say just about like kind of technology running our lives and how I feel like we've become obviously more off put, or we're just going away from nature and natural things and listening to our bodies. Everything is digital and everything is social media. So just tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that and why you think this is so important now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of the screens and technology and the sort of, immediate gratification and dopamine addiction that we sort of get into, or maybe it's, maybe I can not say dopamine addiction, but this, the attachment, to that experience. I think what I've seen at the most macro level, to speak about a different kind of macro, is this modern lifestyle that is so technology driven and therefore facilitates this sort of immediate gratification where we can just sit in a chair and scroll and lose hours of time and kind of modify our brain and our habit patterns, is that it trains us away from relating with ourselves and with our bodies. Sort of, goes back to that point about being, inundated with all of the trends and supplements and, fads in the health industries. We're taking in all of this external stimulation and external input, and not reflecting from an inward, out perspective, not tuning into what we need. And what I've learned after seeing, people for so many years is that as a generalization, we're losing connection with ourselves. We're losing the ability to relate to our own bodies and to listen to our
Yeah.
own bodies, to understand what our symptoms are saying we need. And I think that is one of the greatest teachings that herbalism offers, and that, I definitely attempted to teach over the years as well, is to step back from, all of that input, learn how to re-relate to ourselves, learn how to listen, and then act from that, point. Obviously, hopefully we're acting in a sort of natural way, but that step itself is so, so, so critical for long-term health. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
way of active listening to our own bodies. It's a way of having a relationship with our own bodies. And again, that's one and the same as having a relationship with nature. And actually the first main chapter in the book, where I'm talking about the nervous system and herbs for the nervous system, which are called nervines, in every chapter, there's a more sort of philosophical concept that's in there, as well as the herbs. And that chapter is about listening for that
Love
reason,
that.
because I think it is absolutely critical to our health. So, I wear an Aura ring. I love technology
Me too. I love them.
in terms of,
Yeah.
what it can do to better our lives, but I also will turn it all off and walk away on a regular basis.
Yeah.
That's part of my life in Costa Rica, is to fully disconnect, because it's incredible what we can do when we, re-relate with our bodies.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for speaking on that. I think it's I do believe, and it feels like there's a kind of a collective want to move a little bit away from social media. People are finally starting to realize, like, we need a little grounding, we need some sunshine, we need to touch the earth, this is kind of a dopamine attachment, and we're kind of longing for more. It just seems like we're taking in so much information, and it feels like, as at least in my world, that people are like, I'm just taking in so much information. I don't know where to start. I don't feel good. I don't know my body. You're just grasping from everywhere. So yeah, I totally agree with that, and think that that is absolutely the first step. Actually, the episode that'll be coming out tomorrow is kind of about, that I have coming out, is really talking about what fitness means for you, like being intentional about that piece. So I think maybe this coming out the week after will really be important for that, because you can't really reach any sort of, you can be healthy and you can be fit, but it won't be on your terms. It's kind of like chasing, as far as a physical goal, right? Chasing that number on the scale, if that's someone else's goal, or that's not how you really feel about it.
Yeah.
Or if you see someone taking creatine because they want to build big muscles, and then you start taking creatine, and that's not really your goal, it's not going to create that happiness and that healthy place. So I agree that that's absolutely the first step for sure. I'm really going to enjoy learning about I've done some nervous system work myself over the past few years. So that is kind of a huge piece. I also want to dive into, you talk a lot about, or you kind of associate it with liver detoxification, that kind of stuff. So I had someone on the podcast a while back talking about, she was a massage therapist in that space. And it was a really great episode. And a lot of people were like, that's the best I've ever heard it explained. People don't really understand that detoxification process, that liver health. Do you have a lot of advice on that? Or can you speak on that for a moment? Because I think I think between the nervous system regulation, and then there's a lot of talk now about detoxing and liver health, which is great. It can be information overload, but I think you have a great way of explaining that. So if you could talk about that for a little bit, and maybe how that relates to also kind of just getting in touch with yourself in that first step of clearing out our bodies.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I have a whole chapter about liver health, detoxification, retreating. Actually, this is right on topic, because the chapter is about retreating more in the conceptual sense. We don't have to go on a retreat. We don't have to go on this heavy cleanse, but what does it mean to retreat from some of those inputs, in our environment, in order to reset and release and, detox literally and more figuratively. So in terms of the way that I treat detoxification in general, is to just remind people that, our body is detoxifying itself all day long, every day. Like it does that, excellently and knows how to. And, it's just, that is part of one of the, that's one of the processes that is ongoing. And so, the first step and often the most effective step for detoxifying or detoxification is to reduce or eliminate, whatever it is we're putting into our body that's causing our liver to have to do extra work or our skin to have to do extra, any of our detoxification pathways to work. We stop putting in, excess alcohol or caffeine or refined sugar or chemicals from the environment or, any of these things, then our body's able to clean up and catch up, on anything else that's sort of backlogged. Then I think one of the, of course we can support liver function. And I love to do that with herbs. Actually, one of my top 5 herbs that I think, practically everyone needs that I recommend, all the time that I travel with is milk thistle. Mm-hmm. And milk thistle is an herb that improves liver function, but it also helps regenerate any damage to the liver. And I recommend this so often, not necessarily because we all need to detoxify more, but because optimal liver function is helpful for, yes, detoxification, but hormone balance as well. Mm-hmm. And when we're focused on supporting liver function and we're also focused on optimal digestion and elimination, we're normalizing hormones, and that is sex hormones, stress hormones, sleep hormones, and those regulate so much of our lives, our days. Like, it's incredible how much, balanced hormones can improve our lives. And it's often overlooked that liver function and detoxification pathways are a big part of that. So I like to reduce, whatever we're putting in that's quote unquote toxic or that's just stressing those systems. Support liver function with herbs like milk thistle. Turmeric is also great. Artichoke and licorice are also great. Again, I have a whole chapter on these. And then make sure that we're eating a lot of fiber and drinking a lot of water. Because gut health, motility, elimination, again, is part of that detoxification process. So that's my sort of protocol, top line. And then, from a more mental and spiritual standpoint, we can detoxify these other systems, maybe our nervous system, by just taking a break, taking an hour, taking a day, taking a weekend, taking a walk.
Yeah. Yes.
So
simpler things. First of all, it's so simple, but the way that you said eliminating things, why do we skip over the fact? Why do we go straight to detoxifying it, right? Instead of, and it was like, that wasn't even my first thought. Well, seriously, when you say that, it's so simple, but it's so overlooked that we just want to fix what's happening without changing anything. I think that's part of maybe, I don't know, part of all of this in general. It's part of, I can't even narrow it down because it's a lot. But God forbid we change anything, or God forbid we slow down and go for a walk. It's like, what supplement can I take to manage stress? And that's what you see all over the place is,
Yes, that is unfortunately the modern perspective of medicating symptoms as opposed to addressing root causes.
Yeah. When you said that, I thought, I'm so glad you said that, because it's just like, it's not our natural reaction to slow down or think, am I putting something in my body that's causing my gut to react badly? Or, if my liver is detoxing always, which it is, why is it not working correctly? Maybe it's something I'm doing, instead of, can I just go purchase a random supplement to fix that? So anyway,
to make it detox more. Right.
Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. Like, that's crazy that should be our first thought.
It should be our first. And often that's all we need to do. Often we don't need to go buy a detox, do a juice cleanse, do all these things. Yeah. Now, of course, sometimes those are, important, but far more often, that's not what we need to do. And I would just say, like, on the symptoms versus causes point, or symptoms and causes point, any symptom in our body is a signal that there is a cause.
Yeah.
And that is, that is part of that conversation we were having earlier about listening to the body. Why do I have this symptom? Maybe we don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we do know. Maybe we sense probably kind
Yeah.
of why.
Sure.
We may
Sure.
not want to admit it,
Yeah.
but if we can think that way, we should. We should. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, that was my first. So I think that's super important. Make that very clear. And then yes, finding things to support. I know, and I think that's why the nervous system regulation, the live, like all of that is it's a hot topic right now, as well as creatine. There's just different things out there, but those two things, when I think about, I mean, I even have some issues going on with myself. And my first thought was like, I don't necessarily, and yes, I'm going to the doctor and yes, they're putting me on medication, but I'm like, and they're still trying to find the root cause. But it is frustrating to think like, am I doing something? Is there something that I'm taking? And I have stopped things and do feel better already. So it's like, yeah, I kind of just take a step back and think about what you're doing, how you're feeling, like you said, but that's just not our top priority or maybe our top thing to do. And I think just stepping back is really important. So I love that we touched on all of that because I think that's so important. And that kind of goes back to too, as far as adding more things in. A lot of times when, my clients don't have time to go for a walk or they don't have time to go for a run or they don't, have time to squeeze one more thing into their day. Yeah, it's definitely time is fleeting, but also can we take a little step back with the intention of either it's detoxing or it's calming your nervous system or it's just shutting everything off and letting your mind think, or it's just creating more time for things that matter that will benefit your life rather than scrolling on social media. Maybe that's benefiting your life in a couple ways, but I doubt it really at this point. It's really that helpful. So I think just really coming back to yourself. I love that part about this. I love that we're kind of combining the two worlds and that you can push and you can have a goal and you can really work hard at it. And then after that, you can slow down and give your body that other, part that it needs. So I think this is really, really good. I am so excited to dive into your book and learn more about it. I just think that you said that was the point of your book, which I want to get to in a minute, was kind of your goal of speaking in that way and bringing it back to the world. I think we live in a world where there's so much information. But when you can say it in a way that relates to people, which is what this entire conversation is just very relatable, very down to earth, it does create that curiosity and it does create that something within us that says, oh, I can do that. If she can do that, I can I can be fit. I can have goals. I can take creatine and I can take like I just think they're so off. And for whatever reason, we do think that it's all or nothing. And that's another mindset shift I think that we have in general. But yeah, I'm rambling, but there's a lot in here that's just, I'm so glad that we're making it very, very doable. So give me a little sense about that in your book too, as far as just kind of your goal with that and what you really hope that it gets across, what people are going to get out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm always glad to hear that that's how any of my work is received, because that has been the goal from the very beginning, the very first Instagram post, the very first blog post, which is really how this all started.
Yeah.
I wanted to educate people, but I wanted to do it in a way that shows that I am there in the trenches with them. I am there exploring the human body and mind and connection to nature right along with them, because we all are doing that still. We are all perpetual students of our own bodies in this world, in this life. So, the book is extremely accessible, very empowering. There's so much information in there that can just be taken out and made into that, single first step.
Yeah.
And at the same time, while it's accessible and while it's very much a guide for anybody who's brand new to herbalism, if you're a professional in the healthcare industries or in the fitness industry or in, therapy, or there's so many different, specialties, you're going to learn a lot in naturally as well. So it really spans this sort of like herbalism 101 to here is the mechanism of action of this very, this specific herb for metabolic function. because, one of the things that was always important to me is root causes, but I use root causes as a way of understanding how these things work as well. And I find that, explaining some of the science, explaining exactly why an herb works or why a food works or why,
Yeah.
creatine works helps people to understand their bodies and their sort of routines in a way that is empowering. Because rather than just hearing like, you know, tell me what to do. What am I supposed to do? It's the why
Yes.
and the how. So then in the future, if you don't have that specific, like what to do, you have the understanding of why something worked before, and you can probably
Yes.
do it yourself this time with a different combination of, ingredients. So yeah, I always wanted this information to be accessible. I don't have to try to make it exciting. That's one
Yeah.
thing. Anybody Anybody that encounters, herbalism, they're like, hold on a
Yeah.
minute. There is a plant that does this? I'm just
That's
like,
true.
that's all I have to say.
And you just deliver the information and it's so cool.
It is so cool. It's beautiful. It's fascinating. And it's always been that way. People are like, this is crazy. Like, how did I not know this existed? It's amazing and it's natural and there's no negative side effects. And you're like, yep.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is definitely something that's like, "Oh my god, I didn't know that was." It's like something we're all yearning for is like that basis of like, "Oh, that makes so much sense," when we're out
Yeah.
here searching for something to make sense or something to
Yeah.
feel right. Because when it comes down to it, we are in tune with our bodies, whether we pull out of it for a minute. But when you feel
Yeah.
something like that, herbalism is exactly like you said. People are going to be interested in it, and for the right reasons. And then I'm big on education here too. I want people to understand, don't just take a supplement because someone told you to. Don't just do a workout
Mm.
routine. Don't just lift heavier and hurt yourself because someone told you to. Understand progressive overload, understand what you're doing, and make sure it's something you even fucking want to do for that matter. If not, don't do it right now. If you're not
Yeah.
ready or it doesn't make sense or understand why. So I like that you're very much into that too. Lastly, and for my own enjoyment, tell me about your business for like being in a
Mhm.
space where and this touches on kind of what you were just talking about, because I find it easy to be myself and want to be relatable and want to be different and say things in a different way. But in your experience, was it difficult to come into a space where it's very cut and dry and very this or that and to kind of say it in a different way? Or was that always kind of easy for you?
That's a fun question. I did not find it well. This is also part of my like personality. I have to go my own way. I've always been a little uncomfortable with like fitting in.
Yeah, can
so,
relate.
I definitely I still tread carefully in the sense that I have a tremendous amount of respect for all of the herbalists and all of the herbal industry, history, lineage, everything that comes before me and that surrounds me, that I'm working within. Nothing but respect. And at the same time, as I mentioned, I wanted to present it in a different way, just present it in a slightly different way. And I have only been met with respect and appreciation and, excitement for
Yeah.
doing this, because I think that making herbalism more accessible and exciting and introducing it to people who are unfamiliar with it, any herbalist
Sure.
is going to be excited
Yeah,
about
gonna
that as
appreciate
well.
that. Yeah.
So, so I wouldn't say, I mean, there's absolutely nothing easy about being an entrepreneur. And I
Right.
had so many different iterations of businesses over the year that's a separate podcast.
Yeah.
But I think, and here's the word that comes to mind for me, and that's integrity. It was
Yeah.
always about integrity. I am being who I am. I am sharing something true. I'm doing it in the best way possible I can to communicate transparently, honestly, to not be affected by trends, to not be chasing clicks or
Yeah.
engagement. And to just stick with that over the years. There's so many times that people came back and they said, something about, a reputation or, somebody said something to somebody to said to something. And then they
Yeah.
found me because it was, I was like, okay, good. Like
Yes.
this is like my intention,
It's coming
is
through. Yeah.
resonating. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. I definitely, yeah, the online space is crazy. Entrepreneurship, crazy. And I just remember starting out and thinking I needed to kind of look like these other things, but just trying to kind of figure yourself out. And I can tell you're just speaking to different people. People need to learn from different people and in different ways. We don't all learn the same way. Some people aren't, or some people are more visual. Some people are more verbal. It just depends. But I just kind of wondered because I appreciate what you do in your space and how you do it. I think that's just, and I know it's just different and it's a challenge to be yourself, but also do the things that people give information that people want to digest the way that they need to digest it, but also say it in the way you want to say it. It's such a fun game. So
a lot of needles and thread at the same time.
Yeah, it's so hard. And I think it's fun for my listeners to hear that kind of stuff too, as far as just like, it's not always easy to just put this stuff out there, but we do appreciate when it lands. And we're like, thank you for appreciating that we are being ourselves and just saying this in a way that's like, I hope you get it. I really hope that when I put this out there that it's accepted in a way that I mean for it to be. And so, I think that resonates. Well, thank you so much. I have truly loved this conversation. I was really excited to have you on. So I appreciate it so much. The knowledge is so helpful. The conversation was so good. I know it's just going to land so well. And that was my goal of just being like, hey, you can have fitness goals and you can take these supplements and you can take herbs as well. Also just to pay attention to your body. I think that's something I talk about a lot here. And this will tie into that so well. Your book is available for pre-order now, correct? And then it's out July 22nd, I think.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And you are on full, what do I want to say? Launch mode for that?
Full launch mode. Yes, I am.
Yay, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. I can't wait for this to be out in the world and for it to start changing lives. The reception so far has been fantastic and it's a long process. So
yeah. Good. Fun to see it all come about. But thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate it. I'll have everything for you guys in the show notes so you can go follow her. Well, before you look at the show notes, she is at Rachelle Robinett on Instagram. Very, very simple to find. It's super fun, super digestible. I wouldn't recommend anyone that wasn't that way. But thank you for being on, and I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's show. Go ahead and leave a rating and a review. And of course, follow the podcast so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And I would love it so much if you came to connect with me over on Instagram at Christy Castillo Fit. I will see you next time.